Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly terrifying chapter of ancient history. We're looking at history's most famously undefeated general, a guy who literally conquered the known world, and how he finally met his match. But here's the kicker. He wasn't bested by a rival army, some brilliant tactician, or a superior weapon. No, he was completely undone by the brutal, unforgiving forces of nature itself. We all know the legend of Alexander the Great, right? He toppled entire empires, shattered massive armies, and stretched his domain across continents. But his most devastating, catastrophic loss, the one moment that truly broke his forces, came from the very earth he walked on. It wasn't the swords of his enemies that caused his greatest disaster. It was sand. Section 1. The March from India, Turning Back. Let's set the scene. The year is 325 BC, right on the heels of a shocking, totally unprecedented moment in Alexander's legendary campaign. To really grasp this disaster, you have to understand the army's mindset right then and there. Alexander had just wrapped up a brutal, exhausting campaign in India. But when they reached the river Hyphasis, the unthinkable happened. For the very first time in his life, his own exhausted army drew a line in the sand and flat out refused to march any further east. They were done, finished. This forced the great, undefeated conqueror to actually halt his expansion and turn back. Just imagine the tension and, frankly, the bruised ego of a leader who had literally never been told no by his own men. Now, the sheer, staggering scale of the retreat they were facing was just massive. We're talking about roughly 45,000 soldiers. And this wasn't just some lean, mean military strike force. This enormous column dragged along camp followers, wounded veterans from years of brutal campaigning, and mountains of captured wealth. Think of it like a moving city of tens of thousands of people, all desperately needing to find a way back home. Section 2. Choosing the Gedrosian Desert, a fateful decision. Here's the crazy part. Alexander actually had much safer options. He could have just retraced a northern route. In fact, he sent one of his generals, Craterus, to lead a separate column through far friendlier terrain. But for his own column, he actively chose to march straight west through the desolate province of Gedrosia, which is modern-day southern Pakistan and Iran. So why do it? Well, historians point to a pretty toxic mix of two things. First up, raw ambition and massive military ego. He wanted to succeed where a legendary queen and a Persian king had both reportedly tried and lost their entire armies to those exact same sands. He literally just wanted to outdo them. And second, logistics. He needed to march parallel to the coast to resupply his naval fleet, which was sailing under his admiral Nearchus to map the shoreline. Section 3. 60 days of hell, unforgiving terrain. This decision quickly snowballs into an unimaginable 60-day nightmare for tens of thousands of people. Because what nobody in his ranks fully understood at the time was just how unforgiving this terrain was about to get. The environment started breaking the men down almost immediately. During the day, temperatures would soar well past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, absolutely baking the marching column. But the desert offered zero mercy when the sun went down. The nights turned freezing cold, stripping away any chance of physical relief or recovery for the already exhausted soldiers and civilians. It was like the terrain itself was actively fighting them. Within mere days, the army ran short on water. And finding more? Utterly impossible. The sand dunes shifted constantly, physically swallowing the roads right in front of them. Local guides who claimed to know the way became completely disoriented in this ever-changing alien landscape. And to make matters worse, any water sources marked on their old, outdated maps had either dried up or moved, causing this desperate, sprawling column to repeatedly stray off course. The thirst quickly became maddening. In a horrific bid for sheer survival, ancient sources tell us that the soldiers actually resorted to killing their own pack animals. When absolutely no water could be found in that searing heat, they slaughtered their beasts of burden just to drink their blood. And this environment didn't just passively starve them, it actively consumed them. The shifting sands and blinding winds were so relentless that ancient historians record entire units losing contact with the main body of the army during massive sandstorms. They just vanished into the dust. Many were never seen again. Just when severe dehydration and blistering heat seemed like the ultimate, inescapable threats, nature threw in a cruel, deeply ironic twist right in the dead of night. It is genuinely hard to fathom the sheer terror of drowning in a desert, but that is exactly what happened. A sudden, incredibly violent flash flood struck their camp. This roaring torrent of water utterly devastated the most vulnerable members of the expedition. It swept away women, children, and vital equipment trailing with the baggage train, and it literally drowned exhausted soldiers who had just fallen asleep on the dry desert floor. Amidst all this unrelenting misery, the historian Arrian records an incredibly powerful scene. A soldier actually managed to find a tiny bit of water, just enough to fill a single helmet, and brought it directly to Alexander. It's a striking moment that tells you a lot about Alexander's brand of leadership. Standing there in front of his dying, parched men, he took the helmet and poured the water straight onto the sand. He refused to drink while his soldiers thirsted. It was an agonizing, absolutely legendary display of solidarity. Section 4. The True Cost of Ego, arriving at Pura. After 60 grueling, horrific days in that wasteland, the starving, diseased survivors finally stumbled into Pura, the regional capital. And here, Alexander was forced into a massive reckoning with what he had just done. The death toll is an absolute gut punch. Now, historians debate the exact numbers, but ancient sources describe losses in the Gedrosian Desert that were far, far worse than any single battle Alexander ever fought in his entire life. Some estimates suggest a staggering 3/4, 75% of the people who walked into that desert never came out. The scale of this tragedy hits even harder when you compare Alexander's massive losses to his other two divisions. At Petraeus, he reunited with Craterus's column and later with Nearch's fleet. Now, sure, both of those groups had suffered some losses of their own, but they had taken the safer paths and suffered absolutely nothing approaching the catastrophic, unprecedented death toll of Alexander's main column. So, how does a commander process a self-inflicted disaster of this magnitude? Well, Alexander tried to assert control the only ways he really knew how. First, he ordered a period of celebration and rest for the survivors, trying desperately to lift their broken spirits. Then, he turned to vengeance. He handed down incredibly harsh punishments to corrupt local governors, executing those who had failed to prepare the supply depots he had ordered them to build. But obviously, no amount of punishment could reverse the monumental damage that had already been done. The sobering reality was this: what was it all for? Alexander sacrificed more of his men to the sand in those 60 days than he lost to enemy swords across his entire 8-year military campaign. And yet, this brutal march earned absolutely zero territory, no borders moved, and there was no grand monument ever built to mark where those tens of thousands of people fell. It leaves us with a lot to think about regarding the fatal blind spots of even the greatest, most successful leaders in history. It wraps up our explainer today with this profound question: at what point does our drive to conquer, our need to outdo those who came before us, and our towering ambition stop being our greatest asset and instead become our absolute greatest enemy? Thanks for exploring this crazy piece of history with me, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the true costs behind the ancient legends we so often celebrate.